When I asked my daughter if she could help with groceries, she said, "You need to learn to manage on your own." She didn't expect the lawyer to tell her I'd removed her from my will the night before, but what she really didn't expect was what I'd been planning for the past 6 months. My name is Margaret Holloway. Most people call me Maggie. I'm 72 years old and I've lived in the same neighborhood in Ohio for 47 years. Before I tell you what happened with my daughter, I want to know, where are you watching this from? Drop your location in the comments. I love knowing I'm not alone in this. I'm sharing this story because I think too many of us stay silent when our own children treat us like burdens. We raised them, sacrificed for them, and somewhere along the way, some of them forgot we're still human beings who deserve basic respect. What happened between me and my daughter Victoria didn't happen overnight. It was years in the making. But that conversation about groceries, that was the moment everything crystallized for me. Let me take you back to where this really started, because you need to understand who Victoria was before she became the woman who looked at her own mother with contempt. Victoria was born when I was 25. Her father, my late husband Robert, died of a heart attack when she was 16. Those were dark days. I was 41, suddenly widowed, with a teenage daughter and a mortgage. Robert had some life insurance, but not enough to coast on. I worked 2 jobs for years, days at a medical supply company doing bookkeeping, evenings cleaning offices. I remember those years in fragments of exhaustion. Coming home at 10 p.m. to find Victoria asleep on the couch, her homework spread across the coffee table, making her breakfast at 5:30 a.m. before my early shift, falling asleep during her dance recitals because I'd worked a double shift the day before. She'd tap my shoulder to wake me, embarrassed, and I'd apologize and promise to do better. But I never let Victoria go without. She had her college fund. She had new clothes for school. She had those dance lessons, which she loved. When her friends went to the mall, I made sure she had money in her pocket. I didn't want her to feel different because her father was gone. There were times I went without so she wouldn't have to. I remember one winter when the furnace broke. The repair cost $800, money I'd earmarked for a winter coat I desperately needed. I paid for the furnace and wore Robert's old hunting jacket for 3 more winters. Victoria never knew. She came home from school to a warm house, and that was what mattered. I taught her to drive in Robert's old truck. I helped her fill out college applications at the kitchen table, both of us exhausted but determined. I held her when she cried over her first heartbreak, over the CT scores that weren't quite what she'd hoped for, over the fear that she couldn't do college, without her father there to see her succeed. "You can," I told her. "You're stronger than you know, and I'll be here every step of the way." She went to Ohio State University. Full ride? No. I paid for most of it. The college fund I'd been building since she was born, plus every extra shift I could pick up. I visited her once a month that first year, bringing home-cooked meals in containers, grocery money tucked into cards. She'd hug me tight and say, "I don't know what I'd do without you, Mom." I remembered those words later. I held on to them like a lifeline when things changed. She graduated with a business degree and moved to Columbus. She met her husband, Derek, at her first job. Nice enough guy, quiet, made good money in IT. He came from money, too. The kind of family that had summer homes and investment portfolios and connections that got you interviews at the best companies. They got married when Victoria was 26. I paid for half the wedding, even though Derek's parents were wealthier than I'd ever be. Victoria wanted a destination wedding in Mexico, but I couldn't afford that. We compromised on a beautiful ceremony at a vineyard outside Columbus. It cost me $30,000, money I'd been saving for my retirement. I told myself it was worth it. She's my only child. I wanted her to have a beautiful start to her marriage. I wanted her to have what I'd had with Robert, even if just for that one perfect day. Over the years, I watched Victoria's life improve while mine stayed the same. She and Derek bought a 4-bedroom house in an upscale subdivision. They took vacations to Europe, to Hawaii, to places I'd only seen on television. They had 2 children, my grandchildren, Emma and Jacob. I loved those kids fiercely from the moment I first held them. But here's what started to change. Victoria got busier. The visits became less frequent. At first, I understood. Young children are demanding. Her career in marketing management consumed her time. Derek traveled often. Life is complicated. But then it became something else, something colder. The phone calls I made went unreturned for days. When I'd ask to see the grandchildren, Victoria would sigh like I'd asked her to climb a mountain. "Mom, we're just so busy right now." When I'd offer to come to them to help with the kids, she'd say, "We've got it handled." I started to feel like an obligation, a check mark on her to-do list. Visit Mom, right between grocery shopping and oil change. After my heart episode 2 years ago, I started to really pay attention to how Victoria treated me. Once you see a pattern, you can't unsee it. Every conversation became transactional. She'd call, maybe once every 2 weeks, and ask how I was doing, but I could hear her multitasking in the background. The click of her keyboard, the distant sound of the television. Once she muted me to yell at the kids, forgot she'd muted me, and I sat there in silence for 2 minutes before she remembered I was on the line. "Sorry, Mom, what were you saying?" I can't remember what I'd been saying. It didn't matter anyway. There was the time I called to tell her I'd finally finished the photo albums I'd been making. One for her, organized by year, with pictures from her childhood through her wedding. I'd spent months on them, carefully labeling each photo, writing little notes about the memories. "Oh, that's nice, Mom. Just hang on to it and I'll grab it next time I'm over." She didn't come over for 4 months. When she finally did, she left the album on my kitchen counter. I found it there after she'd gone, forgotten. The financial requests started about a year ago, not direct requests. Victoria was too proud for that. But hints. The furnace is acting up and the quote to replace it is insane. Or, private school tuition increases are killing us. Or, Emma needs braces and our dental insurance barely covers anything. I helped. Of course I helped. 2,000 here, 5,000 there. Once, 7,500 for what she called an emergency roof repair that turned out to be a complete kitchen renovation based on the photos she posted on Facebook 3 weeks later. I was living on Social Security and the small pension from my bookkeeping job, plus what remained of Robert's life insurance payout, which I'd invested carefully. I wasn't wealthy, but I was comfortable. And I kept helping because she was my daughter, and those were my grandchildren. Victoria never paid me back, never even mentioned the money again after the checks cleared. When I gently brought up one of the loans, just once, just the roof repair that became a kitchen, she got defensive. "I didn't ask you to give me that money, Mom. You offered. If you're keeping score, that's on you." Holidays became negotiations. "We'll do Christmas morning with Derek's family, but we can stop by around 5. They'd arrive at 6:30. The kids would be tired and cranky. Victoria would be on her phone. They'd stay for 40 minutes, and I'd watch them pull out of my driveway with the dinner I'd made barely touched. I tried talking to her. Not confrontationally. I'm not that kind of mother, but gently. "Victoria, honey, I feel like we don't connect like we used to. Mom, everyone's busy. It's not personal." But it felt personal. It felt very personal. Then came my 72nd birthday this past March. I invited Victoria and her family for dinner. Nothing fancy. I was making pot roast, her favorite when she was growing up, with those roasted carrots she used to pick out of the pan when she thought I wasn't looking. I'd bought a special dessert from the bakery. I decorated the dining room. Emma and Jacob could play in the backyard. Just a nice family evening. "Mom, we can't make it. Derek's company is having a thing." I saw the pictures on Facebook 2 days later. There was no company thing. They'd gone to Derek's parents' lake house for the weekend. Emma and Jacob were on a boat wearing matching life jackets. Victoria was smiling, her arm around Derek's mother, who was tagged in the post with a caption, "Best weekend with the best grandma." I stared at that photo for a long time. The way Victoria's smile looked genuine. The way she'd found time for Derek's mother, but not for me. The best grandma comment that felt like a knife between my ribs. I tried to tell myself it didn't mean anything. Maybe the company thing was rescheduled. Maybe they forgot to mention the change of plans. But I knew I'd been lied to, and I knew I didn't matter enough for the truth. I spent my birthday alone. Barbara came over with a cake she'd made. Bless her heart. We had coffee and cake in my kitchen, the same kitchen where I'd celebrated Victoria's birthdays for 18 years. I pretended everything was fine, but Barbara knew. She's known me too long for me to fool her. That night, I lay in bed and thought about the 47 years I'd spent in this house. Robert and I had bought it when Victoria was 3. I could still picture her toddling around the backyard, chasing butterflies. I could still see her teenage self, sulking at the kitchen table over geometry homework. I could still remember her coming home from college on weekends, doing laundry, raiding my refrigerator, telling me about her classes and her friends and her dreams. When had I become someone not worth her time? When had I transformed from mom into an inconvenience? The next few months were more of the same. Unreturned calls, canceled visits, a Mother's Day card that arrived 3 days late with a generic message, to a special mother, that you could buy for anyone. No phone call, no visit, just a card that probably cost $3 and took her 30 seconds to sign. And then came the grocery incident. It was a Tuesday in September. I remember because Tuesdays were my grocery days, had been for decades. I'd been doing my own shopping for years, but lately it had gotten harder. My arthritis was acting up. The bags felt heavier. The walk from the car to the house felt longer. My hands would ache for hours after carrying everything inside. I'd been putting off asking for help because I knew how it would sound. I knew Victoria would see it as me being needy. But that Tuesday, I had a doctor's appointment in the morning, a follow-up on my heart medication, and I wouldn't have time to shop before the store got crowded. I hated crowded stores now. Too overwhelming, too much stimulation, too many young people rushing past me like I was invisible. So I called Victoria. I rehearsed what I'd say. I tried to keep my voice light, casual. "Hi, honey. I know you're busy, but I have a doctor's appointment tomorrow morning, and I was wondering if you might have time to help me with my grocery shopping afterward. We could grab lunch, make an afternoon of it, my treat." There was a pause. I heard her exhale. That specific exhale that meant inconvenience. "Mom, I can't do that." "Oh, okay. Maybe later in the week, Thursday or Friday?" "Mom, listen, you need to learn to manage on your own. Derek and I have been talking, and we think you're becoming too dependent. Have you considered grocery delivery or one of those services where they bring meals to your door?" I stood in my kitchen, phone pressed to my ear, feeling like I'd been slapped. Too dependent? You call me every time you need something. The gutter cleaning, the grocery shopping, when your internet went out. Mom, we have our own lives, our own responsibilities. My hand was shaking. "Victoria, I rarely ask you for anything. The gutter cleaning was 6 months ago, and you recommended the service. The internet issue was over a year ago. This is the first time I've asked for help with groceries." "Well, it feels like more than that. And honestly, Mom, I think you need to start thinking about your future. Maybe an assisted living place where there's support for these things. You're not getting any younger." Those words. You're not getting any younger. From my 47-year-old daughter who I'd raised, who I'd sacrificed for, who I'd written checks to less than 3 months ago when she needed help with unexpected car repairs that turned out to be a down payment on a boat I later saw in photos. "I see," I said quietly. "Don't be dramatic. I'm just being practical. Look, I have to go. I have a meeting in 5 minutes." She hung up. I stood there in my kitchen where I'd made thousands of meals, where I'd packed Victoria's school lunches for 13 years, where I'd baked birthday cakes and Christmas cookies and Sunday dinners. I stood there holding a phone that had gone silent, and something inside me that had been cracking for 2 years finally shattered. But it didn't shatter into sadness. It shattered into clarity. I saw everything clearly for the first time. I wasn't a mother to Victoria anymore. I was an inconvenience, a future burden to be managed, Someone who needed to learn to manage on my own, but also someone who could still write checks when she needed money. I walked to my bedroom and opened the drawer where I kept important documents. There was my will, updated 3 years ago. Victoria was the sole beneficiary of everything: the house, my savings, my life insurance policy, Robert's pension survivor benefits, everything. It was substantial. Not millions, but enough. Nearly $800,000 when you added it all up. The house alone was worth $300,000. I'd paid off the mortgage 5 years ago, one of my proudest moments. The savings and investments from Robert's life insurance and my careful budgeting over the years. Another $300,000. The life insurance policy I still carried, $150,000. Robert's pension survivor benefits that would transfer as a lump sum, $50,000. I'd always assumed I'd leave it to her. She was my daughter. That's what mothers do. That's what I was supposed to do. But in that moment, standing in my bedroom holding that will, I thought, why? Why should someone who can't spare an afternoon to help me with groceries inherit everything I've worked for? Why should someone who lies about company events and can't return phone calls inherit the house Robert and I built a life in? Why should someone who sees me as too dependent inherit the money I've saved by being fiercely independent for 3 decades? If you're watching this and you think I'm bitter, maybe I am. But I'm also awake. Finally, awake. I called my lawyer that afternoon. His name is Richard Morrison, and he's been handling my legal matters since Robert died. He's a good man, straightforward and honest. Richard, I need to update my will. Can I come in tomorrow? Of course, Maggie. Is everything all right? Everything's fine. I just need to make some changes. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed thinking about what I was about to do. Was I being rash? Vindictive? Was I overreacting to one phone call? But it wasn't one phone call. It was 2 years of phone calls. It was birthdays forgotten and lies told and money taken and promises broken. It was watching my daughter become someone I didn't recognize. Someone who had time for everyone except me. I thought about Robert. What would he say? He'd been a fair man, a kind man. But he'd also been a man who believed in consequences, who believed that respect had to be earned and maintained, even between parents and children. I thought about Emma and Jacob. Would they be hurt by this? But then I realized they barely knew me. Victoria had made sure of that. They had Derek's mother, the best grandma, who saw them every weekend. I was the grandma who sent checks and didn't see them open their presents. The next day, I sat in Richard's office and outlined what I wanted. Richard listened without judgment, taking notes. "Are you sure about this?" he asked when I finished. "I've never been more sure of anything." We spent 2 hours going through everything. The house would go to a trust that would eventually fund scholarships for students who'd lost a parent, like Victoria had lost Robert, the Robert Holloway Memorial Scholarship Fund. My savings would be split between several charities I'd researched, organizations that helped elderly people with medical expenses, grocery delivery services for homebound seniors, programs that visited isolated elderly people. The life insurance would establish a fund specifically for medical expenses for low-income seniors in Ohio. Victoria would get $1, legally required to show I hadn't forgotten her, and a letter explaining exactly why she was getting nothing else. "This is a solid plan," Richard said. "But Maggie, you should know, this might cause significant family conflict." "Richard, the family conflict already exists. Victoria just doesn't know it yet." I signed the new will that evening, September 18th. Richard had 2 witnesses, his secretary and his paralegal, both of whom I'd met before. They watched me sign. Serious and professional. Richard notarized it. Everything legal and binding. I remember walking out of that office feeling lighter than I'd felt in years. The evening sun was still warm. I stopped at the ice cream shop on Main Street and got a cone. Butter pecan, my favorite. I sat on a bench outside and watched people walk by. Young families, elderly couples holding hands, teenagers laughing together. I felt free. I didn't tell Victoria about the will change immediately. Part of me wanted to see if anything would change on its own. Maybe that phone conversation had been a one-off. Maybe she'd been having a bad day. Maybe she'd call and apologize. But nothing changed. She didn't call to apologize. She didn't call at all for 2 weeks. When she finally did, it was to ask if I could watch the kids the following Saturday because she and Derek had concert tickets. I can't, I said. I have plans. Oh, okay. She sounded surprised. I'd never said no before. What are you doing? Just plans with a friend. Which friend? The question irritated me. Since when did I need to provide an itinerary? Barbara from next door. We're going to the art museum. Oh, well, have fun, I guess. That was it. No, I'm sorry I was harsh about the groceries. No, how did your doctor's appointment go? Just a quick ask for a favor, and when I said no, the conversation was over. That Saturday, I did go to the art museum with Barbara. We had lunch afterward at a nice restaurant downtown, the kind of place I rarely went to because it felt wasteful to eat alone at a nice restaurant. I paid with money I would have spent on gas driving to Columbus and back. Over coffee, I told Barbara everything. She listened quietly, her hand over mine on the table. You did what you needed to do, she said finally. I've watched how she treats you, Maggie. You deserve better. It helped, hearing that from someone outside my own head. If you're relating to this story, if you've ever felt taken for granted by your own family, do me a favor and subscribe to this channel. You're not alone in this. None of us are. October came. Victoria called to tell me they were going to Florida for Thanksgiving with Derek's family. You're welcome to come if you want. You'd need to pay for your own flight and hotel, though. We're renting a beach house, but there's not enough room for everyone. Not enough room. In a beach house they were renting, but enough room for Derek's parents, I was sure. I'll pass, but thank you for the invitation. Okay, we'll do something for Christmas. Christmas. Right. I spent Thanksgiving with Barbara and her family. Her son and daughter-in-law treated me like family. Her grandchildren called me Miss Maggie and showed me their art projects. Over turkey and stuffing, I realized I felt more welcome at this table with near strangers than I had at my own daughter's house in years. 2 weeks before Christmas, I got a call from Victoria. This was unusual. 2 calls in 1 month. Hey, Mom, listen, I need to ask you something. Here it comes, I thought. Derek's been offered this amazing position, but it requires us to relocate to Charlotte. The house we want is perfect, but we're a bit short on the down payment. We need about $30,000. Could you help us out? We'll pay you back once we sell the Columbus house. $30,000. Roughly the same amount I'd spent on her wedding. Added to the other loans over the past year, she'd be into me for nearly $50,000. Victoria, I don't have that kind of money to spare right now. But you have savings, Dad's life insurance money. You've told me about it. The presumption in her voice was stunning. The entitlement. That money is for my future care, for emergencies. Mom, this is an emergency. This position could change Derek's career trajectory. It's a huge opportunity. We're talking about your grandchildren's future. Victoria, my answer is no. Silence. Then, wow. Okay. So you won't help your own daughter when she needs you, but I'm supposed to drop everything when you need groceries. There it was. The mask was off. I asked you for one afternoon, I said quietly. Not $30,000. You know what? Forget it. Forget I asked. We'll figure it out ourselves, like we always do. Like you always do? I couldn't help it. The words came out sharp. Victoria, I paid for your college education. I paid for your wedding. I've given you thousands of dollars over the past year alone. What exactly have you figured out by yourself? That's not fair. You wanted to pay for those things. I wanted to help my daughter, but help is supposed to go both ways. I'm busy, Mom. I have a life. I have kids. I can't be at your beck and call every time you need something. I'm not asking for beck and call. I'm asking for basic consideration, for phone calls to be returned, for honesty instead of lies about company events, for my birthday to matter enough that you show up." Another silence. Then coldly, "I think we need some space. I'll call you when I'm ready to talk." She hung up. I sat with the phone in my hand and I felt nothing. No sadness, no anger, just a quiet acceptance that this was who she'd become. This was who she'd chosen to be. She didn't call for Thanksgiving. She didn't call for 3 weeks after our argument. Early December, my phone rang. Victoria's name on the screen. "Mom, we need to talk about Christmas. The kids want to see you." Not "I want to see you," not "I miss you." The kids. "All right. Can we come over on Christmas Eve, just for a few hours?" "You're welcome anytime, Victoria. You know that." "Okay. We'll be there around 2. They arrived at 4. The kids were on their devices before. They'd even taken their coats off. Victoria looked stressed. Derek looked uncomfortable, like he knew something unpleasant was coming. I'd made cookies. The sugar cookies with frosting that Victoria used to help me decorate when she was little. I'd bought presents for Emma and Jacob, carefully chosen, wrapped in bright paper. I'd set out the decorations, including the ornaments Victoria had made in elementary school, the clay handprint from 1st grade, the popsicle stick reindeer from 3rd grade, the glitter-covered star from 5th grade. We sat in the living room. Conversation was stilted. Victoria checked her phone constantly. Derek made small talk about the weather and traffic. Emma and Jacob barely looked up from their screens. After about 30 minutes, Victoria stood. "We should probably head out, long drive back." That's when it happened. "Before you go," I said, "there's something I need to tell you." Victoria glanced at Derek. "What is it?" "I've updated my will. I met with Richard Morrison in September." "Okay." She looked confused, impatient. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because you should know that you're no longer my primary beneficiary." The room went very still. Derek's eyes widened. Victoria's face went through several expressions: confusion, disbelief, anger. "Excuse me? I've established trusts and charitable donations, the house, my savings, everything. It's going to fund scholarships and help people who need it." "You're joking." "I'm not." Victoria's face turned red. Her voice rose. "This is because I couldn't help you with groceries? You're cutting me out of your will because I was busy one time?" "It's not about the groceries, Victoria. It's about everything. The missed birthdays, the lies, the way you talk to me like I'm a burden, the way you only call when you need money." "That's not true, isn't it? You called me a week after our argument about the down payment. Want to know why? You wanted me to watch the kids. Before that, you hadn't called in 2 weeks. Before that, 3 weeks. And every time you did call, it was because you wanted something." Derek touched Victoria's arm, but she shook him off. "So what? You're punishing me? You're going to give everything to strangers?" "I'm giving it to people who might actually appreciate it, who might remember that behind every donation is a person who worked hard and saved carefully and wanted their life to mean something. I'm your daughter. Then act like it." The words came out louder than I intended. Emma and Jacob looked up from their devices, startled. I lowered my voice. "Victoria, for 2 years, I've watched you pull away. I've made excuses for you. I've told myself you're busy, you're stressed, you have your own life. But the truth is, you've decided I'm not worth your time unless I'm useful to you. And I won't reward that with everything I've built. You can't do this." "I can. I have. It's done. Richard has the paperwork. It's legal and binding." Victoria grabbed her purse. "Let's go," she said to Derek. "Kids, get your coats. Now." "Victoria, no, you've made your decision. I've made mine. Come on, kids." Emma started to cry. She was confused, scared by the yelling. Jacob looked at me with wide eyes, and I saw something there. Maybe the first time he'd really looked at me in years. Derek ushered them toward the door, murmuring apologies under his breath that I barely heard. At the threshold, Victoria turned back. Her face was twisted with rage. "You're going to regret this. You're going to die alone, and you'll have no one to blame but yourself." "Maybe," I said, "but at least I'll die knowing I had enough self-respect not to let my own child treat me like nothing." The words hung in the air between us. For just a moment, I saw something flicker in Victoria's eyes. Hurt, maybe, or the ghost of the daughter I'd raised. But then it was gone, replaced by cold anger. "Goodbye, Mom." They left. I watched through the window as they got into their car. Victoria was gesturing angrily. Derek looked shell-shocked. Emma was crying in the back seat. Jacob stared at my house as they pulled away. I closed the curtain and sat down in my living room, surrounded by Christmas decorations and untouched cookies and presents that would never be opened. I didn't cry. I didn't regret it. I felt free. The next few months were quiet. Victoria didn't call. She blocked me on Facebook. I heard through Barbara, who heard through her hairdresser who knew Derek's cousin, that Victoria had been telling people I'd gone senile, that I'd been manipulated by my lawyer, that I'd cut her out of my will in a fit of dementia. But Richard had documented everything carefully. I was of sound mind. I'd made my decision freely. He'd even had me evaluated by a psychologist, standard procedure for contested wills, who'd confirmed my mental competency. In February, I got a letter from an attorney in Columbus. Victoria was threatening to contest the will on grounds of undue influence and diminished capacity. Richard responded with his documentation, including the detailed notes from our meetings, my clear reasoning for the changes, and the psychological evaluation. He also included a timeline of my attempts to maintain contact with Victoria and her documented responses, or lack thereof. The attorney dropped the case within 2 weeks. Spring came. I turned 73 in March. Barbara threw me a small party. Some of the women from my church came. My doctor came. We'd become friendly over the years. We had cake and wine and laughter. No one mentioned Victoria. They all knew. Small town and news travels. I didn't miss Victoria. I missed who I'd thought she was. I missed the daughter I'd raised, the little girl who'd crawled into my lap and fallen asleep during thunderstorms. But that girl was gone. If she'd ever really existed. The scholarship fund was established in April. The Robert Holloway Memorial Scholarship for students who'd lost a parent. The first recipients were announced in May. 3 students, including a 17-year-old girl from Cleveland who'd lost her mother to cancer. She wanted to be a nurse. I met her at the awards ceremony Richard had organized. She hugged me, really hugged me, not the obligatory side hug Victoria had been giving me for years, and told me I was an angel. I wasn't an angel. I was just a woman who'd decided her life's work should help people who'd appreciate it. I still live in my house. Barbara and I take walks together every morning when the weather's nice. I've joined a book club at the library. I volunteer at the hospital twice a week, sitting with patients who don't have family nearby. I'm taking a watercolor painting class. I've made friends, real friends who call to check on me, who invite me to dinner, who remember my birthday. Sometimes I wonder if Victoria thinks about me, if she regrets anything, if she ever tells Emma and Jacob about their grandmother who loved them. But mostly, I don't think about her at all. I think about the students who'll go to college because of Robert's memory. I think about the elderly people who'll get medical care they couldn't otherwise afford. I think about the life I'm living now. Quieter, yes, but fuller in ways that matter. And I sleep well at night, knowing I finally chose myself.